Peace and welcome to the Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. Folks, we've got a lot to talk about. First and foremost, let me ask this question. Helpful or harmful how one city in Wisconsin is looking to stop credit checks for potential police officers? I just want to have a conversation with you to see how important is that really. Also, we're going to talk about childhood obesity and how the American Pediatrics Academy, what they're planning, what their new guidelines are. We're going to be checking in with Dr. Bridget Cole to get her insight and analysis about the situation. And can we talk about black farmers? Yes, last year there's been a lot of talk about black farmers, but now they're moving forward on suing the Biden administration for not holding up its end of the bargain to get black farmers out of debt. We're going to be checking in with Brother Michael in Hotep to talk about it. And then later, let's talk about the Golden Globes going black. Folks, the Golden Globes are happening tonight, and it has a black host, a black executive producer, and so much more. Will this show a new change, a new wave of diversity in Hollywood? We'll have that conversation. So stay with us. All of that is happening on today's edition of The Culture here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining us and being a part of the conversation. I wanted to have just a brief discussion. I'm sure we're going to hear more about this, but I wanted to have a conversation with you about what's going on in Madison, Wisconsin. Folks, this is interesting, and I think this is very, very big about possibly changing the dynamics of how police does its job, but more importantly, possibly changing the practices of recruitment. Now, we all know, as we have heard many stories about police changing their recruitment practices due to what we have seen with police brutality, police-involved shootings, and just the overall state of the relationship between the police and the community. Now, Madison, Wisconsin chief is looking to step it up and try to do something different, where he's not requiring new officers or new applicants to become officers to go through and credit check. Yeah, take a look at this. This is the story that was ran in the Griot. Take a look at this, folks. It was reported that the city of Madison, Wisconsin will no longer conduct credit checks on prospective police officers, a decision that follows a conference hosted by the 3030 Initiative, a nationwide program that aims to boost the proportion of women in law enforcement to 30% by 2030. Now, Madison Police Captain Tim Patton stated in a memo to the Madison Police and Fire Commission dated December 7th that the credit checks, which cost the city about $700 in 2022, could unintentionally create a roadblock for applicants, particularly women and people of color. This is what was reported by the Wisconsin State Journal. Now, the police chief said, per our research, multicultural populations have disproportionately lower credit scores due to discriminatory practices that are rooted in systems of institutionalized racism. This is what he told the Journal. Wow. So I want to get your take on this, folks. How important is it that we know what a prospective officer's credit looks like? Now, this is the thing that really stuck out for me as it relates to this. And I want you to join me in the conversation very quickly. You can join us in the chat right now as we're streaming live on YouTube and on Facebook and on Black Star Network. But the thing that stuck out for me is that I'm assuming that part of the reason that you do credit check is because if there is a situation where an officer is confronted with making a decision, a moral decision, an economic decision, where they might come across a bag of money or something along that line, that they would not fall victim to, having that issue of possibly stealing, or possibly using their badge to get some type of economic come up, some type of gain. And so this is interesting, but it's also interesting what the Madison police chief is saying that, look, Black folks, brown folks, we have always been disproportionately subjected to some of the crazy practices of the credit system, the banking system, just the overall financial sector of this country. And look, I'm gonna just say it like this, folks, and y'all can tell me if I'm wrong or not. So join me in the chat. That we put so much emphasis on credit as it respects to whether a person is a quote unquote a good person. Whether they, if you know, sometimes we if we say, okay, they have good credit, therefore they are morally good, or they make better decisions. And that's not always true. That is a form of profiling that you and I, we don't often think about, or we may not often think about. But at the end of the day, do we put ourselves in a trick bag where we're telling people, hey, your credit means everything, even though we know that the credit system can be biased, even though we know that the credit system may not take into account where you know life's ups and downs, you know, that we look at a number to gauge whether a person is able to do their job. We look at a number to gauge whether a person is a good person. So I want to put it out there. Do you think this is good? This is helpful or harmful to look at that particular metric as a way for us to figure out if a person should be in the line of duty, should be doing the great work of protecting and serving? All right, let me go to our online culture crew, because I know folks are checking in. Big shout out to my culture crew on YouTube and Facebook, man. Good to have y'all with me this afternoon. All right, Tiana, you kicked us off with it with your thought today. You said good credit doesn't equal good citizen. I like that, Tiana. I really, really, really like that. And we put in like, look, and you know, it's crazy because some of us, of course, not all of us, folks, but some of us really do break our necks to try to maintain or to get to that space, to that score. Because why? The systems that we are part of, if you want to get a decent home, if you want to get a decent car, if you're trying to get a loan for yourself or for your family or for your business, I mean, the credit score matters, right? We understand the significance of it. But then when you're looking at the big picture in this country, right, where we are financially, economically in this country, and we talked to Dr. William Spriggs yesterday, our economist from Howard University. I mean, when we're looking at all of the dynamics that make up the systems, and more importantly, what is determined whether a person gets further along or not, it's not just score. It's your ability to pay. Because sometimes life will throw curveballs at you. Say if you have to have medical bills, and those medical bills, you might have a great credit score, and those medical bills just, boom, blow up your score. You have a medical circumstance. Or you might have a situation where you go through a change of life situation, whether it's a divorce, or you might have a death of a spouse or your partner, right? We talk about that. Loss of job. And I mean, and it seems like, you know, as much as we want to believe that these quote unquote, these institutions, whether you're talking about banking institutions, you're talking about these credit reporting institutions, when we talk about these things, we were like, oh, they're going to be lenient. But at the end of the day, the bills don't stop, right? The bills just don't stop. So, Tiana, I am with you. And guess what? This happens to good people. This doesn't happen to just bad people or people that are just, oh, because you're poor, that means you're morally bankrupt. We got to get out of this, folks. And that is a huge part of our culture and our understanding and our view and our perception of people that I think has put us in a place where we just write good people off for the wrong reasons. All right, let me go back to what y'all got to say. Ming Lee, Natasha Search, you said, I'm sure Jeffrey Dahmer had good credit. Ooh, Jeffrey Dahmer. I watched that Netflix film, and that was, I started it. Let me say that. I started it. Very fascinating film, but, he might have. That's a good one. Let's go to, let me see, from Conscious Thought. Thank you so much, Ming Lee. Conscious Thought, you said, in addition to credit checks, I would add mental health and psychological aptitude tests. When individuals are being sworn into positions of public trust and given a license to kill, not much off limits. So you agree, Conscious Thought. Let me make sure I understand. You're saying that, yes, credit check is important. I am wholeheartedly in agreement with you with mental health checks, right? And we should probably push mental health checks should be done maybe once to twice, maybe every 1 to 2 years, depending on how long, but every 2 years or I know once a year is probably something, could be. So we could say that, once a year you get a mental health check, make sure that you're still in the right frame of mind to do the work of protecting and serving. But I'm wholeheartedly with you. But credit checks, here's the thing. Here's the thing about that for me, Conscious Thought, and you tell me what you think, bro. If we did a credit check, some people get those type of jobs, right? Because police officers, across the country, departments are offering so many incentives to be police officers because there aren't a lot of people in the ranks. The ranks of police officers are actually dwindling, especially in some of these bigger cities. And so departments are kind of compelled to offer incentives, signing bonuses, family bonuses, right? They give you a high salary. You can make $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in just starting off as a police officer, depending on where you are. And so they need people. They need both men and women. And so even with the initiative, with the 30 by 30 initiative that Madison, Wisconsin is doing to try to bring more women into the department, again, it's really because the relationship between police and community has deteriorated over these years, of course, because of what we're seeing with this police brutality movement and just a larger movement against law enforcement. So, yeah, I agree with you. But the credit checks might not be the thing. People may be trying to get those jobs to improve their credit. And is that wrong? Is that wrong? Let's go back to what you got to say. Conscious Thought, my guy. Thank you so much. Janae, you checked in and say, agree. Ask Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah, Sam Fried, who did the cryptocurrency. He's a part of that. Yep. Credit checks. Absolutely. Let me go to Lynette Pinky. You said some jobs you have to have good credit to get that job. A lot of people credit is messed up because of student loans and hospital bills. Isn't that something else? Lynette, ain't that something? You go to school, you get these debts, right? Your credit gets messed up, right? Because you're going to school. Now, you could go to school to be business. You can go to school to be a lawyer. You can go to school to be whoever. You get the loans. The loans are crazy. You're trying to get out into the work world. But more importantly, you're trying to contribute to society. And then once you get the loans, then you get hit with the penalty of the loan of debt, the penalty of debt. And then they penalize you for going to school to get the loan. They penalize you for having the debt because you didn't pay off the debt in an accurate amount of time. So it's just crazy. And this is why I'm saying the credit system should be reevaluated in this country, because it just doesn't seem fair that if I go to school to become a doctor, a lawyer, whoever I want to be, right, and I incur all of this debt, but my ultimate goal is to be of service to society, then that debt should be relieved. That debt should not be there to hold me back from doing what I said what I was going to do. So people don't do the great big work of being doctors and lawyers. People don't go to school to be teachers anymore because there's so much debt that's incurred from the training, from the schooling, that people don't want to carry. So we just like, I don't want to incur that much debt. I don't spend that much time. I'm spending a lot of time as it is in school, but now I got to come out with all this debt. And then when I come out with this debt, I get penalized for wanting to be better. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense. And Lynette, thank you so much. So it's a something to see. And I think this is an interesting conversation that we need to keep looking at. But I wanted to open up the conversation with you. Look, we got to take our first pause. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more. I'd love to get more of your thoughts on this situation around credit and being what it takes to protect and serve in this country. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Don't you think it's time to get wealthy? I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show on the Black Star Network focuses on the things your financial advisor or bank isn't telling you. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, We're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about how Madison, Wisconsin police chief is now looking to remove credit checks, credit worthiness from potential prospective police officers in Madison, Wisconsin. So this is an interesting thing because some of you may not have known that this was actually a qualifier to become a police officer, whereas others you may have known this, but the fact that they check your credit, is always a point of contention. And in Madison, Wisconsin, the police chief, Tim Patton, has made the point that, look, black and brown folks have disproportionately have been on the lower end when it comes to the credit rating system. And it serves as a roadblock. It is a problem to getting new officers in the ranks and files. So I'm asking the question, is helpful or harmful? What do you think? I want to go back to what you got to say. Make sure you join us on the conversation. Post your comments in the chat, and let's continue to discuss. Janelle, you say, look, I never understood why credit worthiness was considered when it comes to job applications. An error or an arbitrary entry shouldn't have that much control over your life. Facts. Janelle, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't. Like, again, I think we attribute morality, good quote of being a good person with your ability to pay off debt. Now, again, we already know life can throw some curveballs at you, folks. So why do we put so much emphasis on your debt? Now, I get it. Like, for some folks, for some things, like if you got to buy a house or a car, I get it. But for a job application, so you're already profiling individuals that say, oh, okay, you have bad credit, therefore you are more inclined to commit crime because you got bad credit. And that's not true. That's not true at all. That is discriminatory. So Jay, now I'm with you right there, sis, wholeheartedly. Why do we look at this arbitrary number when we know that when things do happen in our lives, it's crazy. This is the crazy part about credit. Y'all know this. Some of you may know this. it takes a short amount of time. It takes a long time to build up, short amount of time to break it down. You notice that, right? Like you make all your payments on time. You make sure that everything stays on track. You get a high credit score. Let one thing in life that was unexpected, unplanned for happen to you. And boom, your credit goes down. You're like, okay, I took a little hit there. But then you can't get out the hole for a long period of time. So it's that type of imbalance that I think causes people to really question whether this is a good metric to look at for anything that we want to do in life, whether we want to buy something or just to get a job. All right, let me go to Conscious Thought. You said, look, I remember over 20 years ago, police municipalities across the county were so desperate to fill their ranks that they allowed people with criminal records entry into law enforcement. Dang, that's a new one. I haven't heard that one, Conscious Thought. That's a brand new one, bro. So that is interesting to say the least. That's very, very, very interesting. Thank you so much for posting that. McCole, you checked in. McCole Spicer, you said, look, I've had credit checks for various jobs that I've applied for. There is a reason that employers check your credit. What were some of the main reasons, McCole? I would love to hear it. What were some of the main reasons why employers checked your credit? What were some of the thoughts? Just post that, and I would love to kind of get that back on air because I'm interested. What do employers say to folks who say, okay, we're going to do this credit thing? What are some of the main reasons for that? Emily Nett, you came back and said student loans and interest rates was a mess. College used to be free before the end of Jim Crow segregation. When more blacks started going to college, started going to college, that's when it wasn't free anymore. Right? We don't have to jump into that conversation because we already know the situation. We already know the situation on that. So when we're looking at this situation, I think this speaks volumes about where we are. And honestly, I really, truly believe, folks, that we're at a point in this country because so many people in this country are experiencing some level of economic hardship. Remember, there was that old adage that said that, that you're like one paycheck away from being on the street, or two paychecks away from being on the street. I think we can change that now that in this day and time with inflation and everything else that's happening, we're probably like one paycheck away from being on the street. Probably like one paycheck from being on the street, folks. And that's not a good place to be. When you have a majority of people in this country, and you remember we heard Dr. Spriggs yesterday, and he made this point, and it stuck out for me, really resonated with me. He said that, you kind of get penalized, like, we're talking about the higher interest rates that the Federal Reserve has, determined. And he's like, you get penalized in a way because you're bringing in too much money, so they're trying to keep it under control. But that's only for the few of us who make a certain amount of money over what they would expect you to make. That's only for the few of us. And so it's important that we like kind of push back on this. I'm looking at this report, and when the chief of police in Madison, Wisconsin, Chief Tim Patton, he claimed that the reports tended to indicate that potential officers' history of unpaid child support that guided the course of their background inquiries in the limited cases where they deserved attention. The chief said that in his analysis, given the lack of actionable information, the cost of running the reports and the potential possibility that we may miss the opportunity to meet a great candidate, we chose to request a change to the PFC's process. Child support. Child support. If a person, most likely the man, if the man can't pay for this child, well, what's the reason for that? Right? What's the reason? Is he just not wanting to pay, or he just doesn't have the financial resources to pay? And he says, you know what? I'm going to turn my life over. I'm going to get myself straight. I'm going to become a police officer in spite of all the stuff in my, like, look, if you have a black man who makes the intentional, conscious decision to become a police officer in this day and time without any serious criminal history, maybe he had a run-in with the police when he was 14 or something. But if you have a person like that who is looking to become a police officer, then why stop that process? Because as far as I can remember, folks, police officers have not always been a moral authority in the community. As far as I remember, being a police officer requires you to have to uphold the law, to know what the law is, to uphold it and to enforce it, right? To have a love for the people that you're serving. You want to have a moral individual, but that's for anybody. That's for any profession. But they're looking at the child support situation as well. And I know that's a big thing within the Black community. Huge, huge thing in the Black community. Look, I want to take a quick pause, and because as we look at this situation, we're going to keep our eyes on it. But as we look at this, I want us to have more and more conversations about this, because if we're talking about changing, there's the larger movement around police reform. If we're talking about changing how we police in our community, if we're talking about changing the relationship between the police and community, then there has to be some internal things that need to be done to restructure. That has to be restructured. So that way better people who actually have love for the city that they're in, or the communities that they're in, people who are from the communities that they're in, there has to be a change in there. And this right here could be the beginning of a larger revolution in police practices and police recruitment. So we will certainly keep our eyes on it. Folks, we're going to take another quick pause. When we come forward, let's switch gears. Let's talk about childhood obesity. We're going to check in with our sister, Dr. Bridget Cole. Stay with us. The conversation is up next here on The Culture on the Black Star Network.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
All right, folks, welcome to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I wanted to switch gears now to talk about something that is an epidemic across this country, which is the issue of childhood obesity. Now, if you're not familiar with this issue, the fact is that children are in this country especially, are more exposed to eating, to bad eating habits, to eating foods that are not healthy for them. And at the current rate, we're not looking at having a healthy future. So there has been a number of discussions about childhood obesity, how to handle this serious issue in the community, especially within Black and Brown communities. And so we wanted to have a conversation here because there has been a new change of guidelines on how to deal with this issue. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics, their new guidelines is showing this, and I want to show this. Take a look at this, folks. This is some of the latest word that we got from the American Academy of Pediatrics. It says that children with obesity should be offered more intensive treatment options earlier, including therapy and medication, says the leading U.S. pediatricians group. Now, the American Academy of Pediatrics' new guidance on childhood obesity, the first in 15 years moves away from, quote, watchful waiting or delaying treatment to see if children outgrow obesity. The group is now advising pediatricians to offer treatment options early and at the highest available intensity for one of the most common chronic diseases among children. Untreated, obesity is associated with a range of long-term health problems, including heart disease and diabetes. Here to share with us this situation is a certified medical professional, She's also author of a book about cannabis use, and more importantly, to look at various ways on how we can deal with long systemic issues from alternative means is Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams. Once again, we are happy to have her here on The Culture, here on the Black Star Network. Dr. Bridget, thank you so much for your time today. How are you this afternoon?
Great to see you, Farajii.
Dr. Bridget, let's talk a little bit about this. Actually, we're going to have two conversations with you. I want to talk about this childhood obesity thing, and then I want to talk about with the big hoo-ha in New York City with the opening of their new dispensary, now that they have allowed cannabis to be used recreationally based on that new law from last year, from 2021, excuse me. But let's talk about this childhood obesity situation. So this new guideline is trying to do what? Is it trying to intervene in the process earlier and to provide treatment? And then what does that mean, treatment? What does that mean in medical sense?
Absolutely. So the American Academy of Pediatrics have basically launched the Code Red when it comes to childhood obesity, that we have approached this with this watchful waiting, try to do some lifestyle changes. But what they've seen is that children younger and younger are within the obesity range. And once you start to gain these fat cells and have a lifestyle that produces a certain level of weight and medical issues coming back from that is incredibly difficult to be able to lose that weight, lose those fat cells, and to get more back into the normal range. So they have launched Code Red on this. They've done extensive research, 100-page guideline that they've pulled together to look at all aspects of obesity with children, including neighborhoods, lifestyle, socioeconomics, and long-term outcomes for this. And they have said that we can no longer sit back and not be aggressive, and decided that we can now offer medications as well as even surgery to even some of our youngest of children.
Wow. So medication and surgery, can't sit back. You can't be passive aggressive with it. Mm-hmm. Where does proper diets fit into this whole thing? Where does, making sure that parents are equipped with the tools, whether it's resources, knowledge about, healthy food, healthy eating. Where does all of that sit in this whole conversation now?
Absolutely. So it's first and foremost, we're not sitting back and saying, let our children gain this weight and we'll just give them meds and surgery. And that is not their approach by any means. But they are saying that this is about motivational interviewing, meaning how do we eat? How can we make lifestyle changes? How can we make this most effective so that we can avoid the surgery and the medications? And so it's not just looking at how we eat, but it's how well we're moving. It's about how interactive we are with our friends and family. They're looking at this from every aspect. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know anyone that wants their kids on medications, and definitely don't know anyone that wants their kids having surgery. But we have to have a huge cultural shift if we want to change the road that we're on. And I'm not just talking about the general population, of course. I am specifically concerned about Black Americans. I'm concerned about that 22% of children are within the obesity category. We have to do something about what we're doing with our community to make a shift and to make a change.
So one of the big things, you brought up those numbers. The other number that I saw, Doc, is that this is a problem that affects children. 14.4 million young people in the U.S. Are in this position where their obesity can become a real health hazard. 14 million children.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
So out of that 14, how many of them, and you can say you may not know this number, but how many of them are Black folks?
So 22% are African American. Okay. And wow. So the problem, so that's almost close to 20, almost a quarter of children are dealing with obesity in our community. And we have to look at this differently. We have to make the word eating healthy to not be like a bad or an anomaly or something that we don't want to do. It has to be our standard. We have to spend our time at grocery stores going around the outside and less looking at the processed foods that are sometimes cheaper and more accessible on the inside of the grocery store. We need to start taking care of ourselves. The idea of drinking pop, soda on a regular daily basis, this was something that was invented. Number one, they thought it was going to be a medical cure of some sort, but it ended up being a treat that someone would go to occasionally. And it is now an all day, every day for many families in many homes.
Yeah.
We need to look at how we're treating our bodies, and healthy does not mean less. Healthy can mean more. We can have a snack, shouldn't have to be cookies and candies and chips. A snack can be fruit, and it should be a positive aspect of it. And yes, fruits and vegetables can be sometimes more expensive in the long run, but we need to learn what to do as they start to get older. You can take those vegetables and, the carrot trays and vegetable trays, and you can cook them, right? So you can, after they're sitting there for a couple of days, make it a part of your meals. You can take fruit. And I guarantee you the apple pie that you're making at home is much better for you than the apples from the store-bought ones that are on the shelves. We can make this work for us in a economical way, and we need to take control of our own community.
All right. So how does that work, Doc? And you already know this, but I want to, kind of pick your brain and get your expertise. Some of our people live in food deserts. Some of our people live in spaces where they don't have access to, farmers markets. They don't have access to a decent grocery store, right? And I'm not saying that we should pity them, but I'm just saying that systemically, there are some roadblocks in place where if a person lives in a certain neighborhood, a certain zip code, they're just not going to get, the corner store might be their place where they get their eggs, their milk, their cheese, and, some of the other things. And they, maybe once a week, they travel the distance to go into some other places. So how do we reconcile that? Because I think everybody wants to live healthy. I think everybody wants to have a long life. But sometimes literally being in the place that you call home doesn't necessitate for that to happen.
Absolutely. We have to make more demands of our communities, of our politicians. We have to say that this is no longer acceptable as a way for us to live. We can demand better things from the stores that are in our neighborhoods. They provide what is there because we buy it and because it's cheap. We need to demand more. We need to do self-gardening in our own backyards, in our own homes, on our windowsills. We can feed ourselves. We can start to take control of this and be able to look at how we treat our bodies in a way that's positive. And it doesn't mean that some of the more extravagant things that we eat, the things that have more of the sugars and fats are not something that we abandon completely, but we look at things differently. Even something as simple as standardizing that if you go into a restaurant and they have these huge platters of food, they should be asking you right when you're sitting down, would you like your entire meal or do you want half to go? There's no reason why we're eating enough for the whole day in one meal. And this is a standard in America. Okay. There's no reason to shift how we approach our families and how we choose to eat in our culture.
Folks, we got to take a quick break. Doc, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to continue the conversation around childhood obesity and the new guidelines that is coming from the American Academy of Pediatrics, and of course, get some thoughts from our online culture crews. Folks, stay with us. We got a lot to talk about here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. you get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Folks, welcome back to the show. We've been talking about new childhood obesity rules and guidelines that have come down from the American Academy of Pediatrics, where they have disclosed that now they don't want to no longer do a watchful waiting when it comes to childhood obesity, that they want to pediatricians to intervene with various treatment, intervene with medication, and intervene with some level of surgery to help curb the weight loss gain that young children that we're seeing in this country as young as 10, 11, and 12 years old are experiencing. We've been talking to Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, who is a board-certified physician, CEO of Green Health Harvest, to give us her insight as to what this means, especially for young Black children. Dr. Bridget, again, it's always a pleasure to have you. Many people on our online culture crew, Dr. Bridget, they're pushing back on this whole idea of medications. And folks are like, look, diet is one thing. Mm-hmm. Take them little boys and girls outside. No medication. Can we toe the line on that? Is there a compromise on the medication, or is that medication only for extreme cases?
It's for extreme cases. Like I said, nobody wants to give their children medications, particularly for something that we should be able to control. With diet and exercise, we need it away from, the TV, the video games, the phone. A lot of cultures, you eat dinner, you go out for a walk. We need to normalize activity in our homes, so that we can, and even, there are concerns about, is it safe to go and walk and do what have you? But if we decide as a community that we're all outside walking, then we can protect one another in that process, right?
But that has to be a household value too.
It is. It has to be.
You know what I'm saying? Right. Like as I'm having this conversation, I'm a parent. I got 2 children. I reflect over my parents. My parents didn't encourage me, Dr. Bridget. Like my father was like, go outside. You know what I mean? He didn't take those walks with me, right? Mm-hmm. But there, nowadays, if you're in a single parent home, or if you have multi-generations in a home, that may not be a household value. You know what I'm saying? And if people are working and the times that people are home, I mean, it's very, very easy. And I'm sure you know it, or in the patients have told, it's very easy to be like, just put something in the microwave. I'm tired. I don't want to cook tonight. Or we're not going to make this. You know what I mean? It's already a lot on parents as it is. So I'm thinking like, we got to encourage the parents in a very different way. Because as a parent, we can hear this information and be like, yep, this is good. But then to actually implement it, to make time, to make it happen, that's a whole different level of engagement and action.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And I don't mean to minimize by any means how difficult this can be to make lifestyle changes, because I'm not even suggesting, like you said, just changes in the home. I'm suggesting a cultural change in American culture, period. That how we're approaching food is a very, the companies are making money off of us because it is making us ill, and we need to shift how we're approaching. When you go to the movies and if you order a small and you get a 20-ounce pop, there's a problem with our culture. Okay.
Right.
You ordered the small. Why did you get a 20-ounce pop? Because that is not really what's healthy. It's a way to suck you in, and it keeps you coming back. We need to shift our culture. We need to shift how we look at what healthy is in our homes. And we need to have conversations. We need to have physicians. We need to have caretakers that are willing to have the conversation about what does healthy look like for you, because it's still an individual approach no matter what.
Right. Now, here's the other part about it. Is the American Academy of Pediatrics, are they going to put some pressure on these food companies, these major food companies, for creating over-processed food? You know, one of the big things that we don't allow in our household is high fructose corn syrup, right? Just a small thing. I read the labels. But there are a lot of companies who do that. When I was vegan and vegetarian, you know, the cost of foods were a lot. And then you find out that, you know, some of the foods literally just didn't taste that good because they didn't have certain ingredients in it. So I'm saying, like, who is putting the pressure on the food companies to say, hey, you guys are contributing to the problem. Like, this is not just a parent thing. This is not even just a child thing. You said it best. This is a culture thing. And the culture is dictated by these institutions, as we can call it. Big food is doing it. So is anybody putting pressure on them?
I hope that's the next step, without a doubt, because when, you know, something that I often say, you know, I have teenage daughters. When it comes to clothing, I say, just because they make it doesn't mean you need to wear it. And when it comes
say that for the people in the back, Doc.
Just because they make it doesn't mean you need to wear it. And just because they make these foods does not mean that we need to eat it. We need to approach this differently. And the pressure does need to be put on that. There are so many times in American history where big money makes a decision that pads their pockets, but is absolutely destroys our culture and society. And I can bring up one incident after another. We have to make a shift. And if they're talking about giving our children medications and, God forbid, surgeries, and in the worst case scenarios, if that's going to save their lives, that's fantastic. But weight loss surgery in itself is no miracle by any means. If anything, it's a dangerous surgery. Even if you're talking about banding that's reversible, it's a very serious thing to consider. This should not be entered into lightly. So what are we going to do now that now it is code red? What are we going to do in our homes? What are we going to come together and do as a culture? Because we have to change this epidemic.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, Doc, I know this is a huge problem, so we want to continue to take a look at this. But I was like, well, I got Dr. Bridget Cole Williams on the show. I got to talk to her about cannabis. What do you make? In New York City, they just opened up their new dispensary out there. Hundreds of people stood in line for this dispensary. Oh my gosh! Let me just make sure I'm looking at this. Doc, when I saw the people, the pictures of the people, I was like, in New York City, hundreds of people stood in line for the Housing Works dispensary that they just opened, the first legal dispensary for recreational marijuana in New York, and people came out in droves. Yeah. It was widely anticipated. People were expecting it. What do you, and this is just one of many new legal dispensaries that will be open in the city of New York. How do you think this is going to play out, Doc?
First, I think the first thing that comes to mind is freedom. That, I always approach cannabis from a medicinal point of view, but I cannot ignore the cultural point of view in this as well. And something that never should have been illegal, never should have put people in jail, never should have stopped people from getting jobs, is something that hundreds of people lined up to be able to get freely at this point. And so you don't stand in line because you're looking to just get cannabis. Those people were standing in line because they had the freedom to do so. And so more power to them. And I hope New York can run their program well and give opportunities to us in the process. Wow.
The store opened last week to the public at 4:20 on Thursday afternoon.
You gotta love the cannabis community, right? We always make it a little bit more fun, right?
Oh man. Now, this is a Housing Works is apparently this is a minority-owned nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I'm also trying to figure out is, because there has been so much red tape for Black folks in particular to be in the dispensary business, is this model going to be something that we may see in other cities across the country where there's like, you know what, let's kind of create a nonprofit and let's open it through that vantage point versus as an individual owner? Do you see that happening?
I hope so. I hope that in doing so, and if that gives us more opportunities, then I'm all for it. I had a conversation this morning with a good friend of mine in New York whose application for a license got pushed down because he didn't have marijuana citations on his record. And it is something where we've all been affected one way or another, and some of us much more than others, by the war on drugs. We should really have an opportunity to benefit from this. And you know how I feel about this, that this could be our casinos as compared to Native Americans. This could be our opportunity for generational wealth. And so we need these opportunities, and we need the education to be able to help people understand that this is where we can get out of pain and allow our elderly community to not live in so much pain. This is our opportunity to get away from pharmaceuticals and deal with life and anxiety and depression and so many more conditions so much better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Bridget Cole-Williams, who's board certified physician, CEO of Green Health Harvest. Always a pleasure to have you on the show, Dr. Bridget. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, folks, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to be checking in with my brother Michael Lynn Hotep, as we talk about the ongoing struggles of the Black farmer. Stay with us. It's The Culture here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back to The Culture here on the Black Star Network. I'm your host, Farajii Muhammad. If you haven't had a chance to check us out in the first hour, make sure you do. Make sure you go to blackstarnetwork.com to get all of the latest news and information about what's going on in Black America and beyond. And, of course, to get your replay of all of our dynamic shows, including The Culture, make sure you check us out at blackstarnetwork.com. Also, make sure you follow us on all social media platforms at Black Star Network, on IG and Twitter, as well as yours truly, Farajii, this guy. You can follow me on social media at The Real Farajii on IG, and I'm on Twitter at Farajii as well. All right, folks, I wanted to have a conversation to bring us up to speed with some of the latest around the struggles of Black farmers, as Black farmers has moved forward on filing a lawsuit against the Biden administration, essentially saying that the Biden administration have not held up their end of the bargain when it comes to getting farmers out of debt. This is an ongoing issue. And if you remember, we talked about earlier the last year where we talked about the great struggles of the Black farmer. And one of the big things that President Biden said is that he would invest or reallocate, $5 billion worth of funds to help with Black farms, to get Black farmers out of debt and to create more sustainability for their land and for their products and services. Well, Black farmers are still waiting on the check. And so I wanted to have a conversation about this. One is because we just don't seem to talk about farming enough. We don't seem to kind of really bring that into the space of social justice. Yes, we could talk about police brutality. We could talk about housing. We could talk about credit. We could talk about the medical apartheid that exists in this country. We could talk about all of those things. But what about the Black farmer? What about that man, that woman who has used their land, tilled the ground, right? Literally tilled the ground to bring something of life to us so we can stay healthy. And this is something that I think that we want to just keep our eyes on. So I got my brother Michael in Hotep, host of the African History Network podcast show that you can check out. Make sure you go to his website at africanhistorynetwork.com. And we're always happy to have my brother on. Brother Michael, thank you for being on us once again, brother. How are you this afternoon? There we go. We got Brother Michael. Has got his video in? All right, he's going to get checked in. All right, let me do this. Let me share with you some details about this lawsuit that Black farmers have filed against the Biden administration. Take a look at this, folks. This is coming from the Griot. It says that the federal government has illegally broken a promise to pay off the debts of a group of Black farmers, according to a class action lawsuit. The group hopes to put pressure on officials to keep their word and restore funding that was dropped after a group of white farmers filed legal challenges arguing their exclusion was a violation of their constitutional rights. The lawsuit filed in October remains active even as the U.S. Department of Agriculture moves forward with another effort to help farmers in financial distress, in addition to paying farmers who the agency discriminated against. Now, John Boyd Jr., president, let's go to the next quote. The John Boyd Jr., president of the National Black Farmers Association and one of 4 plaintiffs in the lawsuit, said that the new programs don't match the USDA's earlier offer to pay off 120% of the debt of farmers who are socially disadvantaged. According to the lawsuit, this definition applies to more than 6,500 farmers who have, quote, traditionally suffered racial or ethnic prejudice, unquote, and are saddled with federal loan obligations. The lawsuit says that this includes Native Americans or Alaska Natives, Asian Americans, Black Americans or African Americans, Native Hawaiians or Pacific Islanders, and Hispanic Americans or Latino Americans. Let me bring my brother in, brother Michael in Hotep, to share with us his thoughts on this situation. And folks, join us in the chat as we have a conversation about the plight of the Black farmers in this lawsuit. Brother Michael, it's always good to have you on, brother. How are you this afternoon?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Farajii. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, good.
Let's talk to me about this latest lawsuit from the Black farmers and where we are with this whole process. I mean, I'm remembering the $5 billion, but according to the Black Farmers Association, the check really still hasn't been cut, and 6,500 farmers are still left out there in the cold, not knowing what to do.
Well, what happened is it was $5 billion, not specifically for African American farmers. It was African American farmers, Latino farmers, Native American farmers, and Asian American farmers. Lawsuits were filed by white farmers. Okay, right. And the lawsuits and the payments are tied up in court. A number of white farmers in different states filed lawsuits. So this is going to have to play out in court. Now, when John Boyd in 2022 was on Roland Martin Unfiltered, I've gotten a chance to talk to him a few times on Roland Martin Unfiltered. He said that the Black farmers are going to fight this out in court, to get the $5 billion in debt forgiveness enforced. He said that lawsuit may go on for 2 years or so. Now, this lawsuit that they filed, it looks like it was filed probably about October 2022. I was looking at different articles dealing with this lawsuit. This piece right here that we're looking at is from thegriot.com, right, and picked up by the Griot picked it up from the Associated Press. But it looks like this article is originally from like around early December 2022. So it looks like this is a lawsuit filed by Benjamin Crump on behalf of the Black farmers, and they are complaining about the second type of debt forgiveness that the federal government is trying to do. And this deals with $3.1 billion. Congress provided $3.1 billion that would allow the USDA to be able to work with distressed borrowers to provide help with their farm debts in new and more effective ways to help borrowers as much as possible, stay on land, stay in agriculture, etc. So it looks like Congress is, and the Biden administration is trying to find another way to help the farmers that won't get blocked in court, that won't get overturned in court. Because you got to remember, see, one of the things that they did is they filed, the white farmers filed these lawsuits in courts that are overseen by Trump appointed judges, generally speaking, number one. Okay. Number two, if these lawsuits go to the U.S. Supreme Court, you're dealing with a 6-3 conservative majority in the U.S. Supreme Court. Three of those Supreme Court justices were appointed by Donald Trump. All right.
Right.
So you're dealing, I mean, hopefully they win in court. I don't know. I don't know. Hopefully they will. But because it is an irrefutable fact, African-American farmers have been discriminated by the U.S. Department of Agriculture for the last 100 years. But you can just go back to the year 2020, okay? Because in 2020, under the Trump administration, white farmers got almost $26 billion in COVID aid from the Trump administration, whereas African-American farmers got 0.1% of that. They got $26 million. This article I'm posting here in the chat, this is from the Washington Post. This is a interview with Tom Vilsack, who is Biden's new Secretary of Agriculture. He was the Secretary of Agriculture under the Obama administration. Now, John Boyd and other African-American farmers did not want Tom Vilsack to be Secretary of Agriculture because they had problems with him under the Obama administration. Biden was saying he needs somebody who understands the job, can hit the job, hit the ground running, doesn't have to be trained in the job. And Vilsack said he would do better with black farmers this time around. Apparently, he hasn't so far. We'll see what happens. Apparently, he hasn't so far. But Tom Vilsack, in this interview with the Washington Post, and this article was dated from March 25th, 2021, talked about how under the Trump administration, African-American farmers were discriminated against. So I would like to hear from Benjamin Crump on this. And I also want to hear from the Biden administration on this lawsuit, especially U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack as well on this lawsuit also.
Here's the thing why I brought this up, and I'm glad that you brought some history and some context on this, Brother Michael. The reason I'm bringing this up is because, like I said in my opening statement around this issue, we're just not bringing this into, when we talk social justice, farming is not a part of the conversation, brother.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, just culturally, like we don't actually think about this.
Right.
And so, you know, even for me, it's like, Farajii, you know, you got black farmers out there that are struggling right now.
Absolutely.
So it's like, well, how do we make sure that we have this conversation in a very, very big way, significant way? Of course, we're watching the eyes on the lawsuit, right? And even say if they're blessed to win this lawsuit, that might get drowned in. That's not going to be on the front page of the paper,
right?
Of our local newspaper. Black farmers win lawsuit. You know what I mean? So I'm just trying to figure out on a cultural perspective. You know, we just talked to Dr. Bridget Cole Williams about, you know, eating healthy and childhood obesity. And we're talking about farming. And it's like, man, look, we got some real issues with food in this country. And I think that it's important that we really understand the significance of it. Also, especially given that food costs so much now in a lot of places around this country.
Well, they're contributing factors. I was looking at information today dealing with the increase in the price of eggs. And a lot of that has to do with the bird flu, the avian flu, the bird flu that is killing off a lot of the hens that lay the eggs. Okay. So there's a number of different things here. This ties into history. Number one, we have to understand that African people are the original farmers. We created agriculture. Okay. But a lot of us have forgotten this history. And, you know, part of it has to do with the fact that farming during the Great Migration and afterwards, farming was somewhat probably looked down upon by some African Americans who were able to go into new industries, were able to go to college, able to get away from farming, things like this. And a lot of that had to do with sharecropping. A lot of that had to do with seeing their parents struggle, maybe when it came to farming and having land taken away, dealing with white supremacy, not dealing with farming from the perspective of you have a federal government that is supporting you and helping you with your farm like it did white farmers. Okay. So when we look at very quickly here, when we look at the Great Migration, starting in 1915, from 1915 to 1970, you had 6 million African Americans migrating from the South up north and out west, going to work in factories. During World War I, 1914 to 1918, you have corporations and factories up north marketing to African Americans in the South to come up north and work in these factories, come get a better way of life, come out of the cotton fields and things like this, because you had white men who were going to fight in World War I and they left jobs behind. So this created a labor vacuum. So it was a lot of African Americans who moved from the South up north to fill these jobs, get a better way of life, get a better wage. And then we're going to also see this continue after World War I. We see in World War II, and then after World War II, we're going to see this continue. So part of it has to do with not really fully understanding our history, that the foundation of a community is family, but also being able to provide food for yourself. Okay. And we have a deep, rich history in when it comes to agriculture. We have a deep, rich history there. And then also part of that history deals with the co-ops, the cooperative economics. Yep. One of the largest co-ops that we had was the Black Colored Farmers Union, founded about 1886 in Texas. And this co-op grows to about 1.2 million farmers, something like this. It's one of our largest co-ops. And what they're doing is they're sharing farm equipment, they're sharing agricultural practices, and it was a way for us to pool our resources together so that we could save our farms, grow food, provide food for our communities, etc. So now we're largely, when we look at African Americans, regardless of where you are in the country, we're largely dependent upon other people to provide food for us. What happens if they just say, no, we don't want to feed you? So another co-op that we had was the Colored Merchants Association, the Colored Merchants Association, which was founded about 1928. It came out of the National Negro Business League, which was founded by Booker T. Washington in 1900. The Colored Merchants Association was an association, it was a co-op of African-American grocery store owners, okay? And they had hundreds of African-American grocery stores that were part of this cooperative, because one of the most popular forms of businesses that we had was either a grocery store, because you have to eat, or a funeral parlor, because you're going to die, or a life insurance company. Okay, these were very popular forms of businesses that we had. And when you study the Colored Merchants Association, they bought their products in bulk so that they could get economies of scale. They educated their members on accounting practices, marketing practices, things like this. So once again, we have businesses and we're engaged in capitalism, but we have a cooperative economic perspective when it comes to engaging in capitalism, and it's still centered around us being able to feed ourselves and sustain ourselves. And one of the reasons why they created the Colored Merchants Association was so African-American grocery store owned by us, African-American grocery store owners, could better compete against the white chain stores, okay? The Woolworths and the Kresge's and things like this. This is the early 1900s. Right. So a lot of these ways that we fought back against white supremacy, we've gotten away from, and these are things that we have to sankofa, we have to reach back to go forward, or fetch back to go forward, to understand how we were able to deal with these problems in the past to meet the needs of the community in the present and the future.
You dropped a word right there now, brother. You dropped a word. I'm serious. You dropped a word, because now what it makes me think about is, my grandmother, who came from the Eastern Shore of Maryland, right? You know what I mean? She came up under that. And may God be pleased with her. You know what I mean? She was 90 years old. Brother Michael, she was like a buck. with chains in the pocket. You know what I'm saying? Small framed woman, but she ate well.
Right.
She ate well, and her skin was glowing. And she often talked about the importance of that level of going back to the ground, getting fresh fruits and vegetables. And it's something, because I think now more than ever, we're starting to see the importance of it.
Right.
Not just in the childhood obesity situation, but just even with us as adults. Look, COVID showed a lot, because it opened up the door to show that we're not as healthy as we think we are. Some of us, not all of us, but some of us are not as healthy as we think we are.
Right.
We are all vulnerable to some sort of medical condition.
Absolutely.
Whether you eat meat, whether you're vegan, whether you're vegetarian, pescatarian, like the way we're eating, the foods that we're eating in this country, I mean, big food, big food is a major lobby, has a major lobby, and big food has major stake in this government, and how the government, the FDA, the USDA, all of these institutions, like I asked Dr. Bridget Cole Williams, who's bringing the fire to these institutions?
Right.
Because you can't tell the people, hey, y'all need to eat better. Y'all need to watch your sugar intake, your salt intake. You can't tell black folks, y'all have high diarrhea, not diarrhea, diabetes. Y'all have all other issues. But then you're not going after the institutions that produce the food, that manage the food, and that essentially sets the guidelines on what is acceptable and what's unacceptable.
Right. So you're dealing like with food deserts and things like this.
Brother, you can't do it. How you going to talk about good, healthy food if a person is living 3 miles away from their closest grocery store?
Right. So this is so let me just back up for a minute here.
Yeah.
Number one, it's important to understand that the $5 billion in debt forgiveness for farmers of color was in the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan.
Right.
That part of the legislation was put in there by people like Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, people like Senator Cory Booker, Senator Elizabeth Warren. I want people to understand no Republicans in the House or the Senate voted for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. So you can see how African-American farmers are basically getting no help from Republicans, white or black. Not only that, I wanted to be known, and people can go research this. Senator Lindsey Graham, the senior senator from South Carolina, was on Fox News attacking this debt forgiveness. And he said it was racist, and he called it reparations. And he said, if you're a white farmer, you don't get anything. If you're a black farmer, you get debt forgiveness. He didn't say anything about the $20 billion in COVID-19 aid that white farmers got, almost $26 billion, I should say, that white farmers got in 2020 from the Trump administration. And African-American farmers were largely shut out about that. He had amnesia when it came to that. Then also the junior senator from South Carolina, Senator Tim Scott, the Black Tea Party Republican, Senator Tim Scott, he has attacked the debt forgiveness as well, okay, right, for farmers. And John Boyd on Roland Martin Unfiltered said that Senator Tim Scott is doing nothing for the 6,000 black farmers in South Carolina. Okay, now, if we look at, there was a good article from face-to-faceafrica.com that I shared on the African History Network Facebook fan page. This deals with a black grocery store chain that I never heard of, by the way. It's called Yellow Banana, and they own 38 stores across the country. Okay.
Really?
This is I just posted the link here. And they've secured $13.5 million to expand. All right. We have to, if it doesn't already exist, there has to be a link. There has to be a infrastructure of where a black grocery store chain like Yellow Banana and any other black grocery store chains out there can build this pipeline to get products and to get produce and any other products from black farmers into these grocery stores to get it into the African-American community. If we can't feed ourselves, I don't know what else we can do. Okay. I mean, that's just basic. Okay. Professor James Small talks about food, clothing, shelter, and safety. These are basic things that African Americans need: food, clothing, shelter, and safety. So You have groups like D-Town Farms here in Detroit and the Black Food Security Network, which is a cooperative, and I'm a member of the cooperative as well. So shout out to them. They're building a cooperative grocery store here in Detroit. Is going to be the cooperative economics, the co-ops that I think really save us. And people like shout out to Malika Kinney and everybody at D-Town Farms, but people like Dr. Jessica Gordon Nemhard, who is probably one of the top authorities on the history of the co-ops. She's been educating a lot of African Americans over the past few years. She wrote a book called Collective Courage, which deals with the history of African American co-ops and the different types of co-ops and benevolent societies we've had, from the Free African Society in 1787 to Color Merchants Association, different things like this. But is going to have to go back and study that history and understand, how did we deal with these problems in the past when we're dealing with white domestic terrorism, when we're dealing with segregation, etc. But one of the getting this information out about the lawsuit from the Black farmers is why African American owned media is so important, and responsible African American owned media, because a lot of people don't know that this is taking place. Absolutely. And the other thing is that the Congressional Black Caucus has been at the forefront in trying to get aid for Black farmers also. See, that gets left out of the narrative as well. Okay, so all this is extremely important.
Absolutely. Look, we got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, folks, let's have a few more minutes talking about the plight of the Black farmer here in America. Let's get your take on the conversation. Plus, also, the Golden Globes are tonight, and it's going all Black. We're going to talk about what's happening behind the scenes and how diversity will be on display. Stay with us. Those conversations will be up next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
All right, folks, welcome back. We wanted to continue to have this conversation about the struggle of the Black farmer, about how Black farmers are suing the Biden administration to get some aid for the work that they're doing, or the work that that continues to be neglected. And I just wanted to have a conversation about this whole situation. And so we've been checking in with Brother Michael Nhotep, who is the host of the African History Network podcast show. And also, you can check him out on the AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I want to get some comments from our online culture crew here, Brother Michael, as we talk about farming. I think everybody is in agreement. Food is life. This is an important issue.
Right.
But going back to that general point that you just made, that one is that we are not having these conversations. If it wasn't for Black media, I don't know if these conversations would even really be discussed. Right. So that's why it's important for us to have this space. And then two, the reality is that Black farmers are struggling and can contribute a whole lot to the hunger issue here in America.
Yes.
And we don't, Black farmers just don't have to farm for Black people. They can farm for white people, Latino people. They can farm for everybody.
Right.
And if we look at the hunger issue in this country, brother, you know, I've done work with food pantries in Baltimore. And when I see the food pantries, when you see the quality of food coming into some of these pantries, and people are just giving their donations, but the cans look dented, the food looks old. It's the quality. I mean, the food pantries accept it, but it's not up to par. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not up to code of what you would normally see in the grocery store, what you would want to buy. So when we look at the hunger issue, it's crazy that 6,500 black farmers are in a situation where they're waiting on aid and to try to get some level of debt relief from the situation. Let me go to Taylor. Taylor, hi. Taylor, you posted, said, hi, the African-American farmers wanted Marcia Fudge. She's over there making changes in HUD. I see why. Yeah, Marcia Fudge over there doing what she's doing.
Yeah, that was who they wanted. Former member of the Congressional Black Caucus, but she was put in HUD, and Biden said that he needed somebody in the Department of Agriculture that knew that job already. Vilsack was the former Secretary of Agriculture under the Biden administration, as I said before. John Boyd and the black farmers had problems with Vilsack under the Obama administration, had problems with them then. And Vilsack said he would do better this time, at least on this. I don't know about on the other issues then with black farmers, but at least on this issue here, he has not so far, at least. So hopefully they're successful with their lawsuit. I really want to hear from Benjamin Crump, John Boyd, but also the response from the Biden administration. I haven't seen what the response from the Biden administration is regarding this lawsuit.
Absolutely. Conscious thought, my guy, you checked in and said, point to ponder. If we had black farmers growing food in the U.S., then we would not have to depend so much on countries outside of the U.S. for certain grains to supply the needs in U.S. So we know that America is a major wheat distributor. Russia is a major wheat distributor. You know, we've had conversations, Brother Michael, talking about the wheat crisis that hit the continent of Africa, and how the Russia-Ukrainian war has affected the food distribution and the food supply in Africa. So to Conscious Thought's point of having the black farmers as a way to bring that in, so we don't rely on that. What do you make of that? What do you take from that? Conscious Thought
well, you would need more black farmers growing wheat and things like this to be able to really supply the nation, if we just look at the U.S. in to the level that it needs to be. There's about 45,000 or so African-American farmers, and it's declining. All of them don't grow wheat. So you would have to have an increase in the farmers, and they would need some type of federal subsidies to help them be able to do that as well. Because, and then at the same time, here's the other thing that gets left out of the conversation. African-American farmers are competing against the corporate-owned farms also. And that's another thing. This is why the cooperatives, if you have these farmers who are belonging to cooperatives, this is why the cooperatives can help them more so, because even a lot of white farmers are getting squeezed out by the corporate-owned farms also. Okay, so that's another factor when we deal with this. But one of the ways to help support the African-American farmers is for them to be able to link up with a black chain like Yellow Banana. And Yellow Banana operates under the Save-A-Lot brand name when it comes to grocery stores.
Oh, okay.
But it's still African-American owned. See, that's another strategy there also. That's talked about in that article on face-to-faceafrica.com. So we have to look at these different strategies to really bring these things into fruition, and I'll wrap up with this. Dr. John Henrik Clark, one of our great Grandmaster Scholar warriors, I agree with him on this. He said don't come to me talking that nationhood stuff, because a lot of black people say we want a nation, we want a nation. He said until you have acquired the skills that are necessary to manage and run a nation. You need to understand agriculture. You need to understand oceanography. You have to understand how economies work, how the political structure works. You have to obtain and acquire the skills needed to manage a nation before you can start talking about we want a nation, we want a nation.
Hey,
see,
brother,
it's easier to say we want a nation. It's much harder to acquire the skills to actually manage a nation. That
man is speaking nothing but to my soul when he said that one.
Right.
I'm telling you, I always question that, brother Michael, that the fact that when I've had numerous conversations with black folks to talk about nation. Of course, being in the nation was up. People, man, we need a nation. Like, bro, we need to build a school, build a grocery store, get a bank.
Right.
Let's start from there.
The basics.
And the basic stuff,
shelter, safety. Okay.
Come on, man. Like,
if you can't make your own underwear, how you gonna manage a nation? Okay. So it's the basics. Acquire the skills, get the basics done, then you can manage a nation. And this is the same thing for people who say we need to separate. 99% of people say we need to separate are still here. They haven't gone anywhere. Okay. So once again, it's understanding, acquiring these skills and utilizing these skills that are needed to build a nation. All right. So it's much more than just a saying or a hashtag or something like that. No, it's hard work.
It's a lot more. It's a lot more. And to get to the skills to that point is like, how many of us can really run how many of us really know what it takes to open up a supermarket, for one, let alone to open up a number of supermarkets? I would love to talk to Yellow Banana to get to the folks that the leadership of that group to try to figure out, like, how are you doing this? There was a supermarket in East Baltimore, brother Michael, called Apple and Oranges.
Mm-hmm.
And they were maybe about 10 blocks or so away from Johns Hopkins Hospital in a part of East Baltimore that was legitimately a food desert.
Right.
And unfortunately, they closed down. Black owned, closed down, and people were like, well, what happened to it? Brother, I will tell you, and I've gone to it. Every time I drove past it, because it was right on the North Avenue, right on a major road in Baltimore City. Every time I drove past it, 1 or 2 cars in the parking lot.
Right. Right.
In a predominantly, this neighborhood was black. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So, black. It's a couple things here.
See, and here's the part. The part is, for us as a people, we have to be kind of reconditioned on how to take action on every step. Okay, we need to recondition to own something. Okay, cool. We need to recondition on how we market it. Okay, cool. We need to recondition on how we engage with it. Like, we gotta, and I'm saying that's how bad our situation is in terms of our mental, the mental condition that we find ourselves. That we actually have to tell black people, if you have a black store, go to it. Now, are the prices going to be the same? No.
Mm-hmm.
You can't compare one supermarket to Target, Walmart.
Right. who has economies of scale and have hundreds of locations.
Kroger's and Costco.
Right.
And it's like, and people are like, man, I can get a case of water from Ralph's for $4 or $5, man, and go to the black man, his joint like $8, $9.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because they don't have the quantity. They don't have the volume.
Right. So with that, we have to have a total reprogramming of African Americans. This is why African history and culture are so important. They give us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. They influence our psychology, which influence our actions and behaviors and our results. And they also influence how we engage in economics. So a lot of people say we need more businesses. We need more businesses, but they don't talk about the need to support African American owned businesses so they can stay in business. Okay, this is why I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years, and a lot of people over the past 10, 15 years were saying we need more Black businesses. I said, no, we need to increase the percentage of our disposable income that we spend with Black-owned businesses. Because what happened, we went from like about 2.7 million Black-owned businesses around 2012, 2016, somewhere around there. We went up to about 4 million, but the average revenue was cut in half. It went from about $106,000 a year to somewhere around $52,000, $56,000 a year. And then when COVID hit by April 2020, about 41% of Black-owned businesses had shut down. Okay, so it's not having just more; it's understanding you have to support the ones that exist. Otherwise, they're going to go out of business. Okay, so I encourage people to read the article dealing with Yellow Banana, because it talks about how there was 3 entrepreneurs who started this business, and they have law degrees from like Harvard. Two have law degrees from Yale. One has an MBA from Harvard's business school. Okay, and they talk about how they started the business and the need and why they started the business to be able to provide food for the community. Are we still here?
Yeah, we're still good. We're still good. I'm just marinating off of that.
Right.
I'm just marinating off of that, brother. Real talk. Like,
exactly.
We got to take a quick pause, but really quickly, I mean, we cannot allow this situation with our Black farmers to go unnoticed.
Right.
And I think that it is super, super important. I'm so happy, Brother Michael, that you brought up Yellow Bananas into this conversation, because some of us, we like, well, we need proof. Okay, you got proof. They got 38 stores. You know how, some of
the proof is in our history. The proof is in our history. We had hundreds of Black-owned grocery stores in the early 1900s. The proof is in our history. People's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems in the past, in the present, and the future to meet the needs of the community. The proof is in our history, and that we're still here. Okay, so we have to understand how we dealt with those problems before.
And as you mentioned with that piece, bro, history has shown that we can become an independent people, a nation inside of a nation. History has legitimately shown that. Ever since we were removed from chattel slavery, we have shown that we can build, we can prosper. History has shown that. Every great leader, whether you're talking about Marcus Garvey, I don't care what Black leader, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, every great Black leader has given us something, a glimpse of what our heaven could look like right here on earth. History has shown it.
Right.
We just got to go back to, like you said in the earlier remark, do the same Kofa and go back and look at it, because we're trying to reinvent the wheel in 2023, man. And it's like, bro, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Let's just look at what they did.
Look at how they did it.
Dealing with much more, right? They were dealing with some serious issues. It's in our head back then. It was physical. Now it's mental. We are in our own heads, bro.
Right.
We are in our own heads about our liberation, our existence. And at this point, we got to get out of our own heads. We got to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's move forward. I want to have a conversation about the Golden Globes because they are going all Black, Brother Michael. So I know you like talking about Hollywood.
All right. We can have that discussion.
Stay with us, folks. That conversation is up next here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When you talk about Blackness and what happens in Black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037- 0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home. You dig?
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol, we've seen
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. I want to bring my brother Michael and Hotep into the frame as we close out the show tonight. And Brother Michael, you know, the conversation about farming and food got me so hyped up. I had to reach out to my man. I'm going to try to get him on. He's a pastor out of Baltimore, the great Pastor Heber Brown III. Okay. And he runs the Black Church Food Network. And what they do is they are working to get the churches into food sustainability, black farming. And so, you know, by the grace of the God, we're able to bring him on to give us a little insight as to what the church can do for to help, because some of these churches, even the small churches, have a little plot of land. Exactly. And if the churches get back into and I'm not saying churches, I'm not throwing no shade on no church. I'm just saying in mass, if the church becomes a way for us to raise fresh fruits and vegetables, like in Baltimore, there were over 1,400 churches in the city of Baltimore. It might be a little bit less or more now, but can you imagine if you have that many churches with a small plot of land, and the churches are in spaces where the grocery stores aren't, so they can fill the gaps of fresh fruits and vegetables for those communities that may be suffering from some level of food of apartheid. How that can go so far and feeding the people and getting our people healthy again. So I hope and pray that I can get my brother on to talk about what the church can do across this country, because we need some help in that space, man. We really, really, really need some help. But I wanted to take the last few minutes before we wrap up today's show to talk about the Golden Globes, because they are diversifying tonight. The Golden Globes will be airing, folks. And more importantly, this year, they have a black host, a black executive producer, and the content is going to be geared toward making sure that our black artists in Hollywood are given their due justice. Brother Michael, where do you take what's your stand on diversity in Hollywood and how these award shows are now leaning more towards getting? I can see your face already, brother.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be diversity in Hollywood. There needs to be good, positive representations of African Americans, African American families, intelligent African Americans. There needs to be diversity. But when it comes to these award shows and reading over this, now we don't know who's going to win the awards, but we've seen attempts like this before where they have more African Americans involved in hosting the show, giving away awards, but we don't win the award. Right. And it's critical. The two critical parts to this. One is, who are the people who are actually casting the votes for the winner? Because they have, even with the Oscars, even though there's more diversity in those who are casting the votes, they're still overwhelmingly white. And they end up voting for their friends who are white also. Okay. So winning the Golden Globes, winning the Oscars can really positively impact the trajectory of African-American careers, earning dollars, earning potential at the box office, etc. And then when the same thing with the Emmys when it comes to TV, things like this. So having more African Americans involved in the production, things like this, that can be good, but we have to win the awards as well. Yeah. Okay. No, because that really helps to impact the earning potential of our movies.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The award ceremony will be co-executive produced by, or executive producer will be Jesse Collins. Mm-hmm. Jesse Collins, he produced the Emmy Award winning hip hop heavy 2022 Super Bowl halftime show with Dr. Dre and all of them. Right. He also is the man behind the BET Awards, BET Hip Hop Awards, Black Girls Rock, and the Soul Train Awards. So they brought him on. His co-producer is a sister named Dion Harmon, and the Golden Globes will include a diverse assortment of Black and LGBTQIA plus personalities on stage. And Gerard Carmichael will be the host. He's the other Black comedian. He's going to serve as the host. Mm-hmm. And you all remember he had a show on NBC called The Carmichael Show.
That he quit, right?
Yeah. So
then he came out as gay.
Right. So he's going to do that. But there will be Billy Porter, Coleman Domingo, Tracy Morgan, Jennifer Hudson, Regina Hall, Niecy Nash Betts, Nicole Byer, Jay Ellis, Letitia Wright. These are all the names and folks that will be, honored and awarded. And so I'm with you that unless Black folks start winning the awards, and Golden Globes, for those who may not know, Golden Globes are like the start of the award season for Hollywood, in the sense of, you got the Golden Globes, you got the SAG Awards, the Union Awards. Then you got the Oscars. The Oscars this year is going to be in March of this year. So, this is like their awards run. Some of the big productions, Black Panther, Woman King, some of those shows, the movies that we came to love and have put our money behind, they're going to be up for awards. So it's going to be interesting. To your point, Brother Michael, it's going to be interesting to see who actually wins those awards.
Yeah, just very quickly here, that segment, that paragraph that you just read, the names you mentioned, those are award presenters. Okay,
presenters, right.
Yeah, they're presented, not winners. They're presenters. If you go to the paragraph below that, it says, while HFPA's changes to the people on stage show signs of improvement, the real question was how much the changes would affect the nominations. The next paragraph says, in 2022, the association announced that its voting body received an overhaul and was now 52% female, 51.5% racially and ethnically diverse, 19% Latino, 12% Asian, 10% African American. There are more African Americans in the country than Asians. The U.S. population is about 13.5% African American, about 5% Asian American. So how did African Americans get 10% of the representation?
That's a question.
So once again, look. And the other thing is, and this is a whole nother show. You can have Billy Porter if you want to. You can have Gerard Carmichael if you want to. There has to be a significant representation of heterosexual African American men also. If you want diversity, LGBTQ is in our community. Those are our family members. This is not an attack on them. But there has always been a concerted attack on heterosexual African-American men in the white-controlled media. And there's been an attack on a two-parent African-American family in the media. We can go back and look at when the TV show Good Times started, and Norman Lear and the others wanted Esther Roll to be raising those black children without a black husband, even though when she was on the TV show Maud, that Good Times is a spinoff of, she had a black husband who became a firefighter. When you look at Marla Gibbs was just a couple months ago in late 2022. She was on the Sherry Shepherd show, and she revealed how the TV show 227, which she created, it started out as a play. She revealed how Norman Lear wanted her to be a single mother raising a daughter, but in the play, she was married to Lester Jenkins, a black man, and she had to put her foot down and said, I will not do this show unless I portray a black married woman married to a black man. Esther Rowe had to do the same thing. So this is not an attack on the LGBT community. I'm talking about protecting ourselves from being attacked by white supremacy.
That's a big conversation, very big conversation. We got like 30 seconds, but Brother Michael, you know, again, we're going to take a look at it. Eddie Murphy is going to be honored at the award show tonight for a Lifetime Achievement Award, the Cecil B. DeMille Lifetime Achievement Award. So it should be very, very interesting to say the least. All right, go to African History Network, y'all. Check out
AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Yeah, because tonight's class, 7 p.m. is going to be a free class, and Saturday's class, 2 p.m. is going to be a free class. We have the link there to register for those sessions. Tuesday, January 10th, Saturday, January 14th. We're going to have free sessions, so you can join us for the class. Visit theAfricanHistoryNetwork.com.
There it is, Brother Michael and Hotep. Always a pleasure to have you on, brother. Look forward to reconnecting next week.
Thank you.
All right, fam. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure y'all go to Black Star Network. Show y'all continue support financially. Continue to share the content. Let folks know Black media is here, and we're here to stay. We need your help. We need your support. We need you to keep this momentum going. Go to Black Star Network. You can support us financially, share the content, and subscribe. Download the app for free. And most importantly, tell your family and friends about us. Also follow us on social media at Black Star Network as well. Also follow me at The Real Farajii on IG and Farajii on Twitter. I would love to connect with you as we build this online culture crew community. That's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for RMU, Roland Martin Unfiltered, coming up next here on the Black Star Network. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Talk to you soon. Peace.